strange show last week. We didn't have you on. It was very weird without you. So, what's the outline for today? What have you got lined up for us?
Right. Well, I want to take you through something that we do in physics, and I want to give you a little experiment you can all try at home. Now, if it goes wrong, you can't blame me. You do this at your own risk, okay? But you might get soaked. That's the warning.
Okay, go ahead.
Right. So in physics, we have to teach about this thing called pressure, air pressure. And air pressure is, really, really important for a whole range of reasons. Right now, the weather is bad because there's a low pressure system hovering over us, and it feels like autumn. Has anyone else felt like that? That it feels very autumnal right now. But to try to get people to have an understanding of pressure, we start really far back. We say, why is it so nice to lie down? It is nice, isn't it? But your same weight is going to be acting down whether or not you're stood up or lying down. So why does it matter? Why is it any different? And it's all to do with the fact that when you're lying down, you're spreading your weight out over your whole area. And so it's just more comfortable. And okay, from this starting point, we then try to then take it through to talk about how this links to air pressure. And it's kind of a long journey. But one of the experiments that we do in class, and one that you could try at home, is to try to get an understanding how your force of perhaps your weight acting over the area gives this thing that we know of as pressure. So, for example, this is the experiment that you need to try at home. So you go get a highball glass or a pint glass or something like that, and you fill it up with water right to the very top. And you need to find yourself a small piece of cardboard that's just slightly bigger than the mouth of the glass. And the best type of cardboard for this is kind of like the back of a cereal box, something that's a little bit shiny. And what you need to do, and you can show your kids this or show this in your classrooms, right, is place that piece of cardboard on top of the glass and then just press it gently with your finger and tip the whole thing upside down. And then you need to ask the question, what happens if you take your finger away? Because every single person thinks that if you take your finger away, there's nothing supporting that piece of card and the water will gush out everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'm not telling you that's not going to happen, because if you go wrong, that is exactly what's going to happen. But 9 times out of 10, when you take your finger away, as if by magic, the card sticks to the bottom of the glass and supports the weight of all the water above. And it's a really good starting point for a conversation about what is going on with air pressure. And that's the explanation, of course, that air pressure, the weight of all of the air above us in the sky acting down, is kind of like squeezing us all around. Imagine if you were in one of these soft play centres that no one's been to for the last 2 years. Or when you go into the ball pit and you do that thing where you wriggle down underneath all of the balls, right? And then someone jumps in and you suddenly feel squashed, and the balls squash you from every direction because of that extra weight that's been added on top of the balls. And it's like that with the air. It's acting down on us, but it gets all around us and it squeezes us from every direction. And so what happens to the piece of card underneath the water is it's actually been squeezed onto the glass by the air pressure that's underneath. And that is a brilliant demonstration that you can take into your classrooms.
Okay, that sounds really good. David, there's a bit of an echo.
Right, I'm sorry about that.
Right, okay, so basically, for those of you who've just joined us, David's talking about an experiment and he's explaining air pressure. And what he's saying is that if you take a glass of water and if you put a cardboard underneath it, it could be a cereal box, and turn it over, because of the air pressure, if you take your hand away from the card will stick to the glass. And it's a very good experiment to show your children and explain the concept of air pressure. So David, these concepts, I mean, you do a lot of experiments, because obviously you're a physics teacher, and you've been teaching for a long time now. Have you had any experiments that have gone really, really drastically wrong?
Well, I need to tell you that this experiment went really wrong, and I'll tell you that first. But then I'll scale it up to my biggest disaster ever, which happened with an air pressure experiment. So with this one, with the putting the card over the bottom, what I found is that it doesn't work for beer, because I randomly thought, I was in my second school and I thought, I'll take in a can of beer and I'll sit there at the front and I'll just get a can of beer out of my desk. and just put it on the desk. And sure enough, I had every pair of eyes in the room now staring at me. And I'm like, what's he going to do? Like, why is he just randomly having a beer? And I poured it into the glass. And I said to everybody, like, what do you think's going to happen? And they're all like, it's going to pour out, you know. And I said, no, I'm so confident of this. I'll hold it above my own head. And I held it above my own head. And I took my finger off the card. And of course, what it did was it just poured a whole pint of beer all over me. And it completely didn't work. And the reason is that if you do it with like a fizzy drink or something with bubbles, it creates a small amount of air pressure inside the glass. And so it pushes the card off. So if you do this, you might practice it at home and it worked perfectly with water. But then you go to the pub and you do it with a beer mat. If you do it with beer, you might end up with it all over yourself. So that's just the warning that comes out with that. But if you think other experiments to do with air pressure, we quite often talk about the pressure on the outside of something balancing the pressure on the inside. Like, why do people not like spontaneously explode? It's because inside they're under pressure, and the air on the outside pushes on you the same as your inside. And I did first aid recently, and they went into all that graphic detail about what happens if you accidentally like nick an artery and the pressure you must apply to stop the bleed, and all the graphic descriptions and everything. And it's because you're under so much pressure inside, it's to balance the outside. And you think of a balloon, you blow air into it, and the pressure on the inside matches the pressure on the outside. And what happens if you then release that balloon? Well, obviously it'll tumble to the ground, but imagine you could fill it with some helium or something like that. And then you do that thing where you let it go. And sometimes every time I see a helium balloon rising up in the sky, I just know that there's a child on the ground crying, and it makes me sad. But not too sad.
What does that happen though?
What? Because it's the helium in the balloon.
Yes.
Is lighter than the air around it. So it's like something floating on the sea being lighter than the water. It's going to float up to the top of the atmosphere. I used to have this really nice image in my mind of like the moon with like the lunar lander and all these balloons like rolling around on the surface, but they don't get as high as that. They just go to the top of the atmosphere. And what do they do then? Well, what happens is the atmospheric pressure starts to drop because there's less and less air above, and the pressure depends on how much air there is above you. So when you get to the top, there's no air pressure left. And so what happens is the air pressure inside the balloon is no longer balanced by what's on the outside of the balloon, and it pops. And so it then falls back to the ground and litters some farmer's field somewhere. So this idea that if you have a container that has too much pressure inside compared to outside, it's going to pop. And this is what happened with my most disastrous experiment that I've ever done. So this was, I think, my third school. It was a community college in Leicester. And one of the things that what I noticed after a couple of months of working there was one or two quite reserved pupils came in and they were like, sir, would it be okay if we just sat in your classroom at lunchtime? Because we don't really want to go outside. They're a bit timid, didn't want to go and, mix with everybody else. And I was like, sure, fine. I totally get that. I understand. And I do think that schools should provide spaces for people like that. But I found that I was getting more and more and more. And then one of these lunchtimes, one of them said, sir, can we do some experiments? I was like, sure, this is getting very close to actually just being in a lesson right now. And so we did these experiments, and we did like the simple things, and just like the have a go at this, pour water into a glass and do that. But then we had this idea based on a video that I'd seen on a YouTube clip, that what if you could take a container and make it overpressurize? So make it so there's far too much pressure inside the container so that the container bursts. So what we did, now if I tell you,
David, just to interrupt you there, you thought this was a good idea?
I thought this was a great idea.
All right, carry on.
Things with physics. Now if I tell you how to do this, you've really got to risk assess it, go through all that sort of stuff. But I think I was one of the very first people to do this, so there was not like existing risk assessments, and we had to kind of like figure out what the dangers were. So the idea is you get some dry ice. Now, dry ice is frozen carbon dioxide. The easiest way of obtaining that is by placing a sock over the end of a fire extinguisher. And as the carbon dioxide gas comes out of the fire extinguisher, it gets caught within the sock and it turns into like a kind of white snow, which is dry ice. And so what you do with that, what happens with that is when it warms up and it sublimates and it turns into carbon dioxide gas, there's a huge amount of gas produced from a small amount of ice. And so what you would do with that ice is you put it inside a 2-litre bottle of pop, an empty bottle of pop. You just put it in, just a teaspoon or two into the bottom, and then you quickly screw the lid on, pointing it away from your face, and you then chuck it into a great big bin that is got about 15 centimeters of water at the bottom. And a really important thing is the water can't be to the top, otherwise this thing that you've put on is within plain sight of everybody, and it's just not safe. But if you chuck it in the bin and run away, what's going to happen is it's going to go to the bottom of the bin, and the dry ice is going to melt inside that pop bottle. It's going to produce a whole load of gas, more gas than the pop bottle can take, and the pop bottle is going to go pop, like a balloon popping. The problem is, it's not a problem, it's what adds to the dramatic effect, is that a pop bottle is designed to contain pressurized liquid, Coca-Cola or something like that. And so they can go up to about 10 times air pressure before they rupture. So what happens is you screw the lid on, you chuck it in, and you can hear for about 2 minutes, and everyone stands back, you can hear the sound of the pop bottle starting to stress like an overinflated balloon, and the tension in the crowd goes wild. And then what happens is it goes bang with such a thunderous boom that people will come running from every direction, thinking part of the building's fallen down. Now, we went one step further with this. We saw a video online where somebody poured in a load of really lightweight, like polystyrene balls on top, and it threw them all out of the bucket. And we thought this is a great idea. So we said to the kids one lunchtime, if you want to see a bit of an interesting physics experiment, come along at lunchtime. And so we got this crowd, and we stood them at a safe distance, and we're all stood there. It was at the side of the school, at the boundary fence. And the other side of the boundary fence was a car park for a leisure centre. And what we did was we did the same thing. We put the dry ice in the bottle, screwed the lid on, chucked it in, and then we tipped in the physics department's ball stash. So there was this washing basket full of balls of every kind, tennis balls, footballs, rugby balls. I was told reliably afterwards that there was 163 balls in this stash. The technician had counted them out. And we poured them all in on top. But it created a different effect to the one we expected. By jamming all these balls on top, we created a situation very similar to what happens when a bullet is put into a rifle. And what happens is there's a detonation behind the bullet, and it forces the bullet out at very high speed. Well, this rupturing pop bottle underneath all these balls, there was nowhere for that explosion to go. And so it fired the balls vertically upward like bullets from a gun. And so it went bang, and all of the balls just went right up into the sky, so high that you could no longer see them. Some of them, they went really high. And after about 5 seconds of everyone going, wow, that was awesome, the balls started to rain back down, and they had gone really high. Now, I can tell you, as a physicist, from the time of flight, some of these balls went 0.5 kilometer high, and there was 160 of them. And they all went up in the sky, and then everyone started to run away, as you would when, balls start raining from the sky like meteorites. But because of the direction of the wind, the balls started to then drop down onto the leisure centre car park. And then, as they continued to fall down, they started to hit the roof of the leisure centre. And the people on the front desk of the leisure centre ran out thinking, what is going on? Just to see this apocalyptic scene of hundreds of tennis balls raining from the sky. I said to the class after that, I said, I think you better all go inside. And I went around with my washing basket, being the most apologetic physics teacher you could imagine, saying things like, could I have my ball back, please? And putting them all in. And we were able to recover only 43 of the 160 balls. Some of them, who knows, maybe they're in space right now. But that was my most disastrous experiment. I spent all afternoon shiftily standing at the edge of the room, looking through the blinds to see if I was about to be carted off to jail or something.
I mean, I mean, that's fabulous. I mean, your experiments are hilarious because those of you who don't know, who aren't on Twitter, if you follow David on Twitter, he's doing all these fantastic experiments all the time for his classes. And one of the most funniest ones, David, was when you sent the ants up to space. You know, when you spent the insects up to space. And it's really fantastic. For those of you who haven't seen it, David's dressed in an astronaut's outfit. He's got all the kids in lab coats and stuff like that, and they're all cheering like it's a NASA space station exhibition, and it's really, really fantastic. And that's another example of some fantastic experiments you do, David. Do your kids obviously enjoy it for you to be so active and engaged in your lessons? I mean, clearly you have got the type of students who are able to appreciate the amount of science and the type of science you're bringing to them.
Well, do you know what? I've now worked in 5 different schools, worked in every possible sort of thing, every possible type of school, and I found that it doesn't really matter. What you would find is there's your guys. There's those boys and girls that come along and they just like your thing, and it doesn't matter what your thing is. There will be that community within your school, and if you kind of just reach out a little bit, you'll find that there are those that really, really want to do science, and some of them will come because they just want to be with their friends, and some of them want to come because they just want a safe space where they can be enthusiastic. One of the things that we forget is that it can be quite intimidating when you're a teenager, when you're in secondary school, to show your passion for something. I think we've come an awful long way in making it so that people can really, like, it's cool to be a nerd. It's cool to be a geek. You can have your extreme interest in Warhammer or Harry Potter or whatever, and people just accept it. And I think we've come a massive way for allowing people to be individual and supporting people that are individual. And I think as a science teacher, what I can do is I can just be there for my crowd. I can just make sure that they have the space and the encouragement that they need to carry on. And I think it's true in all departments as well. You'll get your artists and your musicians, and that, I think, is one of the most brilliant things about being a teacher, is that you can just sort of spot people that, the people that linger afterwards to look at the apparatus that you've put out, and the people that you can just tell that they're interested in this or that. And whatever your subject, you then just start to foster that little community within your school that have that same interest in the things that you do. And so yeah, every school I've worked in, I've always had this little crowd come along, and they've always been people that have thrived looking at things blowing up, sending insects into space, all those sorts of things.
See, something you've just said is very interesting, where you've just said that, it does depend on people's interests. And obviously science is one of those subjects where students have to enjoy it in order for them to understand it. I personally think that's the same for every subject. Those who enjoy something and, will go out of their way to try and understand it better. But I find it a bit strange when people, put students into boxes and say, well, actually science is for nerds, because it's something I was reading the other day actually about maths as well, that all those people that say, those people who like science and maths, they're geeks, they're nerds. I'm not sure where that's come from, but however, those are the people who are now very successful in their careers, because you need mathematics in real life. I mean, there's this group that go around saying, for example, oh, I've never used trigonometry, I've never used this in maths, and I've never used this from science, for example. When am I ever going to need it? But actually, you do need it, because I'm looking at it from my point of view. I did a computer science degree, and when I'm looking at those kind of subjects, there was a lot of maths in my subject. And those people who went on to pursue programming, for example, are now creating lots of applications and things that people are using in the world. So, for example, your basic Twitter account, has some form of element of programming involved in it, which requires maths. So I'm always intrigued by these people who say, oh, I learned that in maths, but I've never used it. I learned that in science, but I've never needed it. Yes, agreed. There are some concepts that are like that. But I do also think that everybody needs to kind of have some knowledge about different topics.
Absolutely. And I think, and when I use words like nerd and geek, that's a kind of reclaiming of the word, because I think when I was at school, these were derogatory words. These were words that were called, you were called these and you didn't like it. But I think what I would do is I can refer to you know my little gang as, by the sort of words that, in almost an affectionate way, that they could be called if they were being, ridiculed in some way. And I think
Yeah.
it kind of makes those words a bit softer, that these, let's embrace it, let's have that enthusiasm for something. And that's great. But yeah, on the other end of the scale, those people that probably don't want to become a scientist, what is the value of science or maths to those people? Well, I think what is really useful is that with all of the subjects, is to just have a little bit of each subject, so that you can understand and interact with the world and with other educated people in an informed way. So though you may not use trigonometry ever again, you have some awareness that it is possible to work things out. Like, no longer do you look at a building and think, geez, that must have been made by giants, or there was, that must have been magicked here. Now you can understand that there is a process of human thinking that can lead to a building or a structure standing up like that. Even if you don't remember what it is, you understand it. And what that means is not just about bridges, but it means that you can kind of, your understanding is of the capabilities of the human mind. You understand that some things can be done and some things have not been done yet. And so with your understanding of that, you're less likely to believe in things like magic. You're less likely to believe in things that are urban myths. That is, of course, unless you browse the internet, when there's so many myths out there. The myth busting is an actual really big part of what science can now do. Is this true? Is that true? Did we really land on the moon? Well, here's the evidence for it. Can anyone present any evidence against it? No. What does that tell you? Oh, okay, fine. You can
The
engage with people.
conspiracy theories that we're talking
Yeah,
about.
because now we're at a stage where science and science is a battleground now, and we don't realize it, but we've all become warriors in this battle. Because a very, very long time ago, science and religion had this great big argument, and that was a long time ago. But now the argument seems to be between science and like anti-science. There are people out there that are making videos and they're trying to influence and put certain ideas in people's heads that are just not correct, and they're demonstrably not correct. So increasingly, what science teachers are having to find is it's not misconceptions that have accidentally got there, but it's misconceptions that have been deliberately put there about how the world works.
And I
And
think
that's
sorry to interrupt, David. I think part of that comes down to social media and the bandwagon effect, doesn't it? Because, I mean, I'm just thinking about, for example, if we take COVID and the vaccination, for example, there's a lot of information out there that is inaccurate. And so I guess it comes down to this where people, it's not an argument that I want to go into, but it just comes down to this basic understanding that if you had, had those elements within your subject areas where you've learned certain things, you would have a basic understanding and you would be able to do your own research to find out actually whether something is accurate or not, rather than what happens on social media is where everybody forwards everything without actually looking at to see whether it's accurate or not.
absolutely. And science is training people to be a bit critical. Like, if you've ever been on social media on April the 1st, you're skeptical about every single thing you read.
Yes.
And you need to have that mentality all year round, because some of the things that are out there, they're not supportable by facts. Sometimes you think, well, that'd be a really nice thing if it was true, but it's not actually a thing. I mean, I'm getting my second vaccine on Tuesday, and I am personally looking forward to brilliant Wi-Fi signal afterwards, because I want five. I want
5G.
I'd love my phone. I'd love to be a portable aerial for my phone, but sadly, this is not going to happen. So, believe in the science because it can be demonstrated to you. It's science is science because you don't have to take someone's word for it. It can be shown. You can see it yourself. it's self-evident, and
Um,
that is why we do it.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously there's always two arguments to a debate, and I suppose that other people have their argument as well. And obviously, free speech, we're accepting that in this society that we're living in these days. But I do think that the geeks and nerds will win, because if you look at Elon Musk, he's absolutely fantastic. He's doing things that no one else has done before. He's innovative. I don't think he's the best role model, but we do want to get to a stage where we are able to continue being innovative, because, you know, there was a lot of inventions and innovation taking place many, many years ago, and they did come from science and maths. And I just feel that I don't think that there's that much innovation left compared to what we used to have. What do you think?
I think we need to move away from this sort of idea of the lone genius, the Elon Musk, the Albert Einstein. As great as these people are, I think what actually benefits the country is if we bring up everybody rather than just put on pedestals these. I mean, those people have, you know, really vital, you know, sort of business positions that, you know, that we do need to have these entrepreneurs, and we do need to have these people that are taking a risk, taking a gamble, investing, making all these technologies that we all enjoy. But what we also need is just lots and lots of engineers, lots of mathematicians, scientists, because all of these people can basically make all of the stuff that surrounds us, design it. And what we've realized is that it is these skills that create a really, really strong economy, because it's if you look at those countries that have very strong economies due to their sort of export market, it is due to a heavy encouragement, heavy investment, and also like a high status of the person that creates these things. In Germany, for example, if you are an engineer in Germany, you're there like how we worship our medical doctors, and I worship my medical doctor. You know, in some countries they also hold up people that are more scientific, mathematical, engineering, and that gets into the minds of people at school. They realize, yeah, I'd love to do that. I'd really want to go and do that. That's a great idea. And so what we need to see is that effect, you know, the idea, the status of it, the get back into the minds of pupils so that they aspire to go on and do these things.
That sounds great, David. And I'm inclined to agree. If we do want to raise up the standards, then we need to raise everyone up and not just a few. And yeah, it's been absolutely fantastic talking to you today.
Oh, thank you very much. It's always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully you'll be back on the show in a few weeks' time.
Sure will.
Okay, we can think about what you've got lined up for us then. I look forward to it. It's always interesting. Those of you who've just joined, I know there's a lot of listeners who've just joined recently. We have been talking about air pressure. We have been talking about failed experiments that David did, which I think he'll be happy to tweet about in a bit. And we have been talking about science in general and what it's like across the country. So thank you so much, David. It's been absolutely awesome. And I'll see you in a few weeks.
See you later.
Bye. Okay, David was great. He's always great. We're going to head over to the news, and then we'll come back to my next guest.
Introducing Amanda Davey. Amanda is one of the first specialist teacher assessors for dyscalculia in the UK and offers dyscalculia tutoring and bespoke training for schools. With 26 years of teaching and tutoring experience in the UK, Amanda offers specialist online tuition focused on building confidence and developing skills. Amanda also offers online and face-to-face training on dyscalculia for educators, informing practitioners as to how to identify children that may have dyscalculia and how to support them in class. Find out more about Amanda and what she can offer you at www.amanda-davey-dyscalculia.co.uk. Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. At Creative Resources, we've been rethinking what a classroom can be. We've created a huge range of more than 2,500 original and exciting resources that span across more than 15 different subject areas. Whether you're looking for primary or secondary level resources, careers options, PSHE, arts or humanities, Creative Resources have the resources for you. We offer full curriculum packages and unique, challenging escape rooms themed on topics such as Shakespeare, Tudors, and fractions. We have quizzes, task cards, Tarsier puzzles, and lots more. Better still, more than 100 resources can be accessed for free. Just visit our website, www.cre8tiveresources.com. You can get 10% off any order you make on our website by using discount code TT Radio. Creative Resources, made for teachers by teachers. This is Teachers Talk Radio, and this is Teachers Talk Radio News.
This is your Teachers Talk Weekend News. In the latest report from Public Health England, schools and universities are the most common setting for coronavirus 19 outbreaks. According to a Sky News report, the rapid spread of the Delta variant is linked to a surge in infection rates across the UK. Until the end of May, schools and universities consistently accounted for the majority of outbreaks, although for the week ending 28th of May, there was a 39% decrease, coinciding with the recent half-term holiday. Public Health England data suggests that in the week starting 19th of May, more than 10,000 incidents occurred, with over half happening in educational settings for under 18s. The increased infection rates across the UK has led to a delay in further easing of restrictions initially planned in England for the 21st of June. Primary schools in Britain are set to have higher quality PE lessons and better opportunities from next year. On Thursday, Education Secretary Gavin Williamson announced investment of £320 million as the PE and sport premium continues to be funded. The plan will encourage children to play more sport and improve their physical activity in a bid to combat the after effects of lockdowns linked to the COVID-19 pandemic. Schools have also been given the chance to spend any leftover or unspent funds from the previous 2 years.
Thanks for that, Joe. My next guest is Yasser Hussain. Yasser is a teacher of business studies and has been both head of department and head of year. He's going to be sharing his experiences and advice about the difference between both progression routes. And it's supposed to be for NQTs, but not just NQTs, because I know there are a lot of teachers and members of staff who don't actually know what's involved in either route and would like to know more. So firstly, Yasser, hello, can you hear me? Hello, Yasser?
Good morning. Can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Yeah, hi. How are you, Yasser?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, how are you?
Very well, thank you. How have you been?
Yeah, very well. Yeah, the weather was very nice yesterday, so we had a nice day out with the kids. So and the family. Yeah, today's looking a bit looking a bit dull, but yeah, hopefully it'll get better.
Have you been watching the football?
Of course, I have. Of course. Let's not mention the obviously. Let's not mention the drab draw on Friday. I'm obviously a massive, England fan, but my wife, she's actually Scottish, so that was an interesting Friday night for me. The big England fan. I don't know. I'm quite positive to say that they'll probably get to the last 16, but we'll see beyond that. So hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll do well against Croatia. But then beyond that, I don't know. He needs to be a bit more attack-minded, I feel, as a coach. But that's another story for another day, I suppose.
I haven't watched the Euro for many, many years now. Obviously, it comes on every 4 years, but I used to watch a lot of Italian football when I was younger. So I was really into the Italian football team, and my favorite player was Del Piero.
Oh yeah.
And whenever the World Cup was on and whenever the Euro was on, I used to support the Italians. And I think it was kind of, I knew that they were going to win as well, get to the final stages. So I always knew against my siblings that at least I'd still be in with a chance of winning our little sweepstake that we used to have.
Yeah.
So, yes, sir, let's get back to the show. What is your role and what do you do?
Yeah, so I am predominantly a teacher of business, and also at the minute I'm a head of department. I've also taught health and social care and other vocational subjects such as travel and tourism, which I currently teach. So yeah, that is my current role. I'm working an academy not far from where I live, and I've been teaching for just over 13 years.
Okay, brilliant. Have you done any other roles previous to this?
Yes. So as you may have mentioned before to the viewers, I was a head of year as well for 5, maybe 6 years. The roles slightly changed under different management structures. So head of year alongside being obviously teacher of business, and yeah, that was a very rewarding, a very challenging role, and one which I really enjoyed. However, to do the role effectively, I don't think there was enough time. You used to just get one extra free to do that role. So yeah, it was very, very challenging, but again, very rewarding.
Were you not given your PPA time?
There was just an additional hour to do that role. Just an additional hour. That is it. And the PPA time that we normally get is a 10% allocation on your timetable. That is it.
Okay. And what was it like to be a head of department?
Well, currently I am a head of department. Yeah, it's a role that I feel it's not as hands-on as a head of year in terms of managing behaviour or anything data-driven in relation to students, tracking their behaviour and the progress. But it's a job that I do really enjoy. It's a small department. There's only 3 of us in the department, and I mean, yes, I enjoy it. It's a role that I've just been doing since September. Although I was second in the department many years ago prior to becoming head of year. So this year's been a strange year, as many other teaching professionals can obviously echo as well. But it's yes. I mean, once I'm in the role and done it for a number of years, I can show that I've made impact. But generally speaking, from when I've been, in that department as well, it's a department that we do really well in. We get good outcomes because the students really enjoy doing the subjects that we teach. And I think obviously it depends on, the members of staff you have, and, the pedagogy, and obviously the type of lessons that you plan for the needs of the students as well.
And yes, so can you explain for our listeners who are maybe NQTs or who don't know anything about head of department role, what kind of roles and responsibilities do you have to carry out on a regular basis?
Yeah, so obviously, as you know, the education field is, currently evolving all the time, and so you have to quality assure the teachers within the department through work scrutinies, through classroom observations, make sure schemes of work are in line and differentiated to meet the needs of the students. The long-term plans, all this is part of it. Holding departmental meetings when members of staff are not doing what they should be doing. You need to be holding them to account and having sometimes difficult conversations with these members of staff, which is can be quite a challenging thing, particularly if those members of staff are more senior to you. So though that's an interesting conversation, and sometimes it can be quite challenging, but you learn how to sort of deal in different situations and how to adapt. And it's a job that it has a huge amount of responsibility, but you know, you need to always think about why you're there. It's always about, you know, you're there for the students ultimately, and you want to give them the best. Yeah, it's a job that, you know, obviously I'm fairly new in, since I'm doing it since September. So once I've been doing it for a number of years, then that's when I can really say, right, you know what, I've shown an impact, and I know I'm confident that I will be successful in the role.
And when you're saying impact, for our younger teachers who don't know what that means, what do you mean by impact? How do you show impact?
Impact meaning that you are able to demonstrate progress for students, you know, and show that you are able to, you know, lead a department successfully through, you know, encouraging members of staff to do the best, giving the students the best, getting students where they need to be at the end of, say, year 11, or at the end of, you know, their studies, when it comes to, you know, them coming to choose their university choices as well. So yeah.
Okay, so it's basically making sure that you're accountable for results, and you're actually making sure that teaching and learning is effective in your department, and making sure that students are actually making the progress that they're supposed to, so they can leave with the qualifications that they're supposed to.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely.
In terms of, I know you've only been doing this role for a short time. What do you think you're good at, and what do you think that you're slightly not so good at, but you need to work on?
Okay, yeah, it's funny. I had a conversation with the senior leader not so long ago, the other day actually, during the week, and we're currently sort of piloting a coaching model at the minute, and it's going to come live from September onwards, and it's called instructional coaching, and a lot of schools are using this model nowadays. And his criticism of me was that maybe I'm not as assertive as I should be, so that's probably something I could work on, maybe. So when it comes to having difficult conversations, that is maybe that I'm fully aware that maybe I can work on, which is absolutely fine. And I took that criticism on board. Didn't necessarily agree with him entirely, but I took it on board, and you know, it's something that I can maybe work on. We can all get better. You know, we can't all say that we're all the finished articles. You know, it's all about improving, and improving ourselves, and making sure that we're doing the best that we can day in, day out, for our, you know, for our students. And things that I'm good at, I'm definitely good at, you know, planning my lessons, organising the department, getting the instructions out to members of staff, and you know, making them aware that of what their roles and responsibilities are, what they have to be doing for each week, what the focus is on, for example, for a particular week. So you know, that's, you know, that's taken time to get to that position. You know, initially, I think when I first came into the profession, I don't think I was probably, you know, if I'm being honest with you, the best organized. But you know, obviously, you know, you work at things, and then you get better. So yeah, that, I think those are the things that generally I'm good at. I'm good at with, you know, building relationships both with colleagues and members of the school community. You know, that's students as well. I think that's crucial when you're working in such an environment, because if you're able to build strong relationships, then you're able to, you know, you can alleviate a lot of barriers.
Yeah, I mean, for our younger teachers, I think it's all about influence, isn't it? Like, you being able to have good relationships with staff and students means that you can influence them, and you can make a positive impact in whatever you're trying to achieve. Absolutely. In that time. You talked about having difficult conversations, and you said that it was a criticism that your senior leaders had. And I don't think you're the only one. I think a lot of people do have an issue with having those difficult conversations, because obviously teaching is a really highly demanding job, and it's really stressful. And sometimes, you know, things do fall between the cracks, and it is really hard to have difficult conversations. So have you got any advice or tips of what people can do to ensure that they've had those difficult conversations, but at the same time they've managed to negotiate and get what they need from the interaction, and, you know, the working relationship still remains intact?
I think really it's about sitting someone down and you know, just being honest and upfront, and asking them, why we're having this conversation first and foremost. And really, it's not just, you can't just say it just happens like that. You need to be able to work and negotiate and speak to them openly. And if, for example, a member of staff is not doing meeting deadlines, for example, then those members of staff need to be held to account, and there needs to be that conversation needs to be had, and the evidence needs to be there. And what I found from my experience, even as being head of a year, particularly from experienced members of staff who didn't like being managed by someone who's less experienced, like myself, was that you need to have everything documented. So keep your emails, keep a log of everything, and and it's, you need to make sure that these conversations are had. And if you are not showing to have any impact with those conversations, then obviously go and you need to go and refer to your senior leadership link and then take it from there. But I know, even from my experience, even senior leaders can often not do what they should be doing. So yeah, it's just a case of having that conversation up front, speaking to them, and pinpointing where that things have gone wrong, and making sure that, okay, fair enough, if you made a mistake or if this has not been done, then we have to move on from it and learn from it. And if things are still not things are still not improving from these conversations, then then it's a case of holding people to account and maybe looking at ways or strategies and where we can support them further.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've learned that from my managerial role as well, that you have to, at the end of the day, we are there to support our students and make sure teaching and learning is effective, because we are providing them with things that they need to leave with once they've left school as well. So as much as I enjoy teaching and learning and making sure that they're enjoying my subject, it is a case of them actually getting the results that they need to move on and progress into their professional careers afterwards as well. There's not just one purpose of education. In terms of the difficult conversations, it can be quite emotionally demanding when you're constantly recording things and you're having to follow things up, but it is a necessary element that you have to make sure that you do in order to get people to be held accountable for the roles that they are carrying out. You talked about instructional coaching. I mean, to improve teaching and learning, there's an element of support that you just mentioned. Can you just go through what is instructional coaching and what kind of support do you give your team members?
Okay, so instructional coaching is a it's a strategy that's been used for quite a while now, and a lot of multi-academy trusts and a lot of schools are going down this road where you come in so you go into a lesson for your member staff, or you may mentor particular member staff. So, for example, me being a head of department, I may mentor an NQT in another department, and what you do is you have to look for levers in their lesson, key levers in their lesson where we feel they can improve on, and it has these have to be levers where they can manage them effectively. So it could be just one, for example. So, for example, the member staff, you go into a lesson and you've seen and they haven't gone through the learning objectives clearly for in their lesson, as an example. That could be one of the key levers that we're looking at improving on next week, and so that needs to be focused on for the week after. And it's a model that's quite new. We're just trying it at the minute, and members of staff it will take time, but there has to be buy-in from all members of staff, because coming in to your lesson on a weekly basis and having getting judged upon, and it's meant to be a non-judgmental process, and hopefully it will, but it's not a QA, it's not like a quality assurance. So that in itself is there to improve ultimately teaching, learning, and have an impact on improving the outcomes of students. So it's well renowned, and it's been used in a variety of schools across the country. I think Ambitions Institute are rave about it as well. So yeah.
I mean, from what my understanding was that because we're not actually doing instructional coaching in our school just yet, we're doing just normal coaching, and we are looking to move on to that in the future. But from my understanding, it feels like you're changing people's habits, because habits are really hard to change. And I had Dr. Gabia Tollisgate come in onto my first show, and she was talking about the same issue, and it reminded me of instructional coaching, where if you've been a teacher for X amount of years, you've got into habits, and some of those are bad habits that you've slipped into. And so you need to continuously refine your practice. And instructional coaching allows you to be able to develop a habit and put that into routine, or even change a habit. But Dr. Gabia was talking about neuroscience, and she said that one of the things that is important with this habit changing is being able to think it as well. So you need to have the right mindset in order for you to change that habit, and which is what you're talking about in terms of you need to get buy-in from staff in the first place. Absolutely. Otherwise you can't get anyone to do anything. And I think that's the hardest thing of a middle leader, isn't it? Getting other people on board and buy into the change that you're trying to implement.
Absolutely. I think you'll realize yourself, if there's no buy-in from particular members of staff, or members of staff who are just not on board, then those members of staff will ultimately need to look elsewhere, potentially, because I think going forward now, this is a way a lot of schools will be doing, and the success rate is shown. I don't know what the research shows, but I don't really have any statistics to quote, but they are, it's a successful model from what I've heard anyway. So and a lot of schools are going down this road now.
And in terms of being a middle leader, have you had any major challenges? And if so, what have you learned from those challenges?
Yeah, so one of the challenges I've mentioned was managing a member of staff who was the previous head of department and has gone on to a senior role. That can be quite difficult, particularly if they're not meeting deadlines. So that's one huge challenge for me, and one that I will overcome. I know I will overcome. So this member of staff, we've worked for many years together. So that's something that we will. We're aware of each other's working habits. So that's one huge challenge, and that you just have to try and find a way to work out the best solution sometimes. And if it's through conversations or through reminders, etc., so be it. But if it's having to maybe have a word with another colleague who's at a senior level, then so be it. But ultimately, you have to remember we're all professionals, and we have to be doing our job to the best of our abilities, and doing what we're there for, to teach students. And if you're not meeting deadlines, then we need to find out why, how we can support that member of staff.
And sometimes, schools can get quite political, can't they? So if you do have someone like who's a senior leader within your department and you are managing them, what does the phrase manage up mean? What does that mean, Yasa? And how should we deal with people who are in SLT position but aren't necessarily carrying out their roles as effectively as they could be?
I think really, if their members of staff are not doing what they should be doing, and you've got the evidence to show that, then you need to go directly to the top, to the principal, and have conversations with them, because that's, from my experience, I've done that, and I've shown that to work really well. And really, ultimately, it comes down to what your principals like. If they're supportive, and if they're wanting the best for the students, which they should be, then they should be doing the right thing, rather than not giving you time to obviously speak to them, or even doing what's the right thing. And ultimately, you are accountable for your department's results, and the teaching and learning and everything else that comes with it as well. So you need to make sure that the principal is supportive for you, and if they're not, then it's it's a difficult one. You need to think about things then.
I think with me, I mean, because those of you who've just listened today, I'm actually a middle leader as well. And I think where I found my slight difficulties is a similar thing when you're having to manage up. Like you could be a really good middle leader, but sometimes you'll have a senior leader who will do something that's inappropriate or you don't agree with, or maybe they won't take any action for the role that they're supposed to be carrying out. And I found that I have to monitor exactly the same way that you're saying, and hold people to account. And sometimes that is difficult as a middle leader, but at the end of the day, middle leaders are the school's engine rooms.
Absolutely.
We drive all the change management that it comes through us. And so for me, I always feel that if your senior leadership team isn't supportive, whether it's your direct line manager or even the head teacher, then I think that's a decision you have to make, whether you want to work in a school like that, because working in schools is a team effort, and if there's no team, then it means that you're not going to be successful in your role.
Absolutely. Definitely.
So did you have enough time, resources and support for your role? Because sometimes, yes, so what happens is, I mean, I was promoted quite quickly in my first role. I think it was between 6 months to 12 months of being an NQT, within the space of being an NQT. Wow. I'm curious, did you have enough time and resources and support for your role? Were you giving any training?
Yes, absolutely. So, I when I initially got promoted, I think in my second or third year of teaching. I went on lots of courses, external courses, management courses that supported me to obviously improve my practice. So I was able to book time off for CPD. Off timetable. Didn't really want to have much of a disruption on my lessons, but that was really supportive for me going forward. And whatever else I could find in my own time as well, that supported me. That was quite supportive of the academy that I worked at previously. But you find that as a teacher, time is one of your biggest challenges, and sometimes you don't have enough time to do the job, in fact, all the time. And you're having to use a lot of time over the weekends to obviously sometimes do your planning and even your marking, etc., which is again, you need to think about obviously your mental health as well. But that's again, I'm going off subject here. That's another subject for another day maybe. So at that time, yes, I had enough time because the school was very supportive, allowing me to go on these courses.
Okay, that's really good, because some schools don't allow people to go on courses because of lack of time and obviously cover. You're having to get other members of staff to come in, and budget constraints and things like that. So that's really good that you were supported in your role. Another question that I wanted to ask you is, in order to, I mean, being a middle leader is quite difficult because you're having to manage lots of people. And so sometimes your own development gets left behind because you're busy doing other things, whether it's dealing with students, whether it's dealing with other staff. When do you get time to do additional reading? Because I see so many people on Twitter doing fabulous things, reading, and they're reading books and doing lots of research and everything. But I find I get very little time to do that. So I'm asking you, do you get time to do that?
Yeah, well, it's difficult, I'll be honest with you. I tend to have a habit where I tend to stay in, and people, the viewers can, through the listeners can even comment on this if they like. But I find that working quite long during the beginning of the week, sometimes finishing at maybe 6 o'clock even, to do all that is where I'm trying to get that time in. And it has to be done because ultimately, it can impact your family life. Having 2 kids, a wife, that's a challenge in itself. And trying to balance all that, having a work-life balance is difficult. So putting in more hours during the, starting of the week is where I find to try and do that, and which has a less impact on my own family life during the weekends as well. And that's what I tend to do, and it's worked quite well for me. Currently doing a course through Ambitions this year as well, midway through it, which will hopefully get me an NPQ accreditation at the end of the next academic year as well. And it's called Expert Middle Leaders. So I'm pretty sure a lot of viewers are familiar with that. So there's a lot of providers out there, and if you are thinking about becoming a middle leader, I would definitely look at going down towards the route of becoming, getting your MPQ qualification, because these accreditations are very highly regarded, and they do support you in your applications if you are wanting to get other roles within other other schools or institutions.
And like, just to finish off, it's not all that. I mean, there are good aspects of being a middle leader. We get to do lots of good stuff. So can you just give us the benefits of being a middle leader? Because there are going to be some NQTs and, some first year, second year, third year teachers are thinking, oh, I'm not sure if that's for me. What are the good things about being a middle leader?
No, yet you can set for as a middle leader, you are, the manager of that department. So you the buck stops at you. So in terms of curriculum planning, in terms of having the autonomy to tell your members of staff to do certain things in a certain way, that is where you have that responsibility. Also, I tend to do quite a lot of enrichment within my department. So I work with the Prince's Trust. It's I think that's a crucial part for the students as well. So we work on a project at the minute with our year 9s called Mosaic, where we prior to COVID, we used to get them coming in every fortnight, and they used to work on presentation skills, confidence building, CV building, that sort of thing. So that is something that I really enjoy, and it's, you see the students in a different light that way as well. So that is, that's across the department, not just within, the subject of business, but is run, within the different subject areas within, our small department. So
yes, I agree.
Really that.
I know of Mosaic. They're the ones who do the mentoring across schools, and they're actually very highly qualified as well, which is really, really good.
Yeah.
I've got Mr. Cotton, who's messaged in saying that he's in a science department, and 3 out of 4 of his science team, when he was head of department, had their own meetings to go to because they were SLT. Yeah. I mean, you've mentioned that you have a member of SLT in your business studies department. Is it difficult to get everyone in the meetings when they're non-specialists and they're members of SLT?
Yeah, you do find that difficult, and then what you find is, you have to, whenever you have a meeting, then the minutes have to be sent to them as well, and a nice follow-up email saying, do you understand the minutes, etc., will be sent, and they have to acknowledge that. And if that member of staff is still not doing what they should be doing, then these things need to be passed on to others above to try and sort out. But I think that you do find that, I have, from my experience, I've found that having that time with a senior leader is difficult. Often, when in your meetings, you might see them if once in a half term, if that, or once even in the term, which is not great. It's not productive, and it makes life, it can be quite difficult. So managing a senior leader can be quite difficult, and that's not just from my experience. I know, having spoken to other middle leaders as well within other multi-academy trusts.
And it's the same in other departments, not just your department, because I used to teach ICT, and I had senior leaders in one of the departments I was working in, and it does become quite difficult when there are conflicting meetings where they have to go to, and also I do think that a lot of people do find that meetings are unnecessary in schools because the amount that we have are not meaningful. The time that's spent on them is not productive. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree with you. Sometimes it's a meeting for the sake of a meeting. When I first started quite new in the profession, we used to have a pastoral meeting every morning, and I think that was unnecessary. Meetings have been cut short now. We just tend to have departmental meetings probably 2 or 3 times during half term, which is quite nice. And we have a full school briefing that's just done once a week. So I think that's better in terms of how it's managed there. And we get sent a bulletin out weekly as well. So everyone can read an email. Well, some people, believe it or not, may not. So you'd be surprised. But I think holding a meeting for the sake of a meeting is a poor use of time. And I think, you know, as you're aware, you know, we're always racing against the clock to get all our jobs done. Sometimes we don't get them done. So, you know, time is precious in this profession.
Yeah, and I think what I've learned with meetings as well from previous schools that I've worked in is that my meetings were mostly effective, or my head of department's meetings were mostly effective when we were talking about teaching and learning, because there are some schools that don't talk about teaching and learning, they just stick to admin stuff, and it does get very difficult, because how are you supposed to improve teaching and learning if you're not discussing it, right?
Absolutely.
Just to go through a few comments, we've had Mr. Cotton messaging again, and he says that yes, he does find it difficult to manage SLT members or non-specialists, but he still finds time to talk to them afterwards.
Definitely.
And he said that the best thing about being a head of department is that you're a budget holder. Noreen has messaged in. Noreen is one of our wonderful hosts on our show. She said, as middle leaders, do you get a chance to engage with governors? What would you like to say to governors who are listening in? That's a very good question.
That's a fantastic question. You know, at the minute I haven't. I've just been involved in the process of recruitment, and I haven't had a chance yet. But that's something that I would like to. And I've mentioned before to my senior leaders, and yeah, they are aware of that. And obviously, you know, the last couple of years, this year and last year, it's been, you know, very turbulent, and hopefully going forward we will. And in, you know, when I worked for the Multi Academy Trust, I have had you know, that opportunity, and it's been really good to speak to, you know, the governors. So you know, it's always good to get experience to speaking to other stakeholders within the organization and finding out what, you know, where they see fit is, you know, what they want really for the school and for the students going forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good question, because I used to be a staff governor as well, and I always said that, you know, governors should be, you know, having an active role in the school, and they should be holding people to account as well. So for example, it's always good for a governor, you know, whether you're the chair of governors or whether you're, you know, another governor, parent governor, or anything else, you should go into lessons. You should be invited into lessons. You should be taking part and having a look at the school ethos, looking at the way that the behavior is, looking at what kind of learning's going on. They should be involved and interwoven within the school atmosphere, and definitely, you know, they should have a role to play as well. And you know, if people aren't being held accountable, because let's face it, schools are organizations, and the only person in charge is the head teacher. We don't have HR departments anymore. You know, we don't have anybody looking after schools as such and monitoring them. So it is the role of governors to be involved in the aspect of the day-to-day running of the school life.
Absolutely 100%. You'd be surprised, actually. The Multi Academy Trust that I work at do actually have a HR department, but that's, yeah, it just depends again.
It depends on the school, right?
On the school, because yeah, absolutely.
Because there's some schools that are really small, and there are some schools that are really huge as well.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
if you're a Multi Academy Trust, you've obviously got a HR department.
Yeah, you would.
Mr. Cotton's messaged in, and he agrees with our meeting conversation. He says that my colleague had this meeting could have been an email mug to bring to meetings, because obviously somebody who didn't like being in unnecessary meetings.
Yeah.
And Tim, who's our tech support, messaged in saying, we have the deputy head in our department team. He doesn't always make it, but has also proved very useful at times, because he's able to get information from the horse's mouth. So he knows what's going on in SLT, so they're able to help with things that they need to think about strategically in the department. Absolutely. I guess so. Noreen's also said that becoming a governor yourself is really good CPD, and I do recommend, if you are a new teacher, being a staff governor was one of the best roles that I carried out. It made me look at the school from a different point of view, and gave us insights into things like budgets and looking at personnel and lots of different things that are happening within the school that you don't necessarily see. So you see what the workings of a school from an outside perspective. Mr. Cotton's also said, I agree, Tim had its uses. We were part of Building Schools for the Future, which is a really old program.
Yeah.
And I got invited to the meetings with the architects. Yeah, agreed. You know, having that relationship with SLT and governors is important when you're in a middle leader role as well.
Definitely.
Okay, yes, that's been absolutely fantastic. Let's move on to becoming a head of year, because you've also done the pastoral side, which I haven't done. But I'm really wanting to know, what's it like to be a head of year, and what's the difference? What roles and responsibilities did you have to do? And again, what were you good and not so good at?
Yeah, so as a head of year, you're predominantly there to look at the behaviour and the attendance of the overall year group that you were in charge of. I worked in 2 different structures. One was just a standard head of year, you're working for a year group, and then we used to have something called vertical tutoring, where we used to have a mixture of students from across the school, from year 7 to year 13, mixed in a year group, and the older students are there to support and even mentor the sort of the younger students. And both structures had their advantages, disadvantages. Roles that I really enjoyed. However, again, you just did not have enough time to do the role. You were just given one extra free to do the role on top of your additional 10, your standard 10% PPA time on your timetable. The role that the things that I was good at was dealing with when students used to have when they used to have fallouts, I was able to diffuse any situations. I'm good at reparation meetings. I really enjoyed meeting parents, when students were not following school rules or always constantly getting into trouble, and I was shown that was showing that I was able to have impact in them situations. One of the challenges that I found was the attendance, where students, particularly those from who were persistently absent, trying to get them back into school was very difficult, because at the time we didn't used to have a dedicated attendance team. And I know a lot of schools buy in with having attendance teams where they're able to have education liaison officers and literally go on door knocking and bring them into school. So that was one of the things that I found difficult to try and improve. But there were so many aspects of the job that I really enjoyed. I used to be able to lead assemblies, to the year group share successes, and obviously where there was a situation where we could improve on going forward. There were so many aspects of the role. It was just very difficult, because you just did not have enough time to do the role effectively.
Yeah, I've had a message come in saying that they've taught in a few schools where the head of year roles were non-teaching staff. Yeah,
correct. So I used to have a pastoral leader, so to speak, and they used to work alongside me. And then a lot of the tasks that I weren't able to get through, I used to sort of delegate to them to complete. And they were the if you were able to have a good working relationship with them, then you were able to show that you could do really well in the role. And it was an amazing role, honestly. You get to find out a lot about your students needs and their home lives, and it's incredible.
So yes, sir. I found out that, so for me, I never wanted to go down a pastoral route.
Okay.
I was always into the head of department route. Curriculum was my thing. However, I do feel that the head of year route, and you can correct me on this because this may be a fear that I have myself, there's a lot of safeguarding issues and a lot of things that you have to deal with behind the scenes that teachers sometimes don't necessarily find out because it's on a need-to-know basis.
Yeah.
I mean, how did you feel taking on that role, and was there was there any pressure in carrying out that role?
Yeah, there was many issues where we used to come across many safeguarding issues, and the safeguarding leads within the school were very proactive and highly involved in many different situations. And you just have to make sure that the job that you were doing was you were making sure you're doing everything right. And you were that was a fear. And when anything that you weren't you were unsure about, then you would always double check that information with the safeguarding lead, and that would always be good. And I was quite lucky from my experience to work with some really very good professional people who worked very hard and were very supportive at that time.
And did you, again, just like a middle leader role for head of department, did you have any specific training for being a head of year, or were you just thrown into the role?
Again, no specific training. Of just thrown in pretty much, and thrown into the deep end and get on with it, sort of thing. And I did go on a couple of head of year courses as well, provided by external providers. They were just day courses, nothing as such more. But yeah, I found obviously learning on the job is the best way, and being thrown in the deep end, it was quite daunting at first, but that's the best way we learn. And obviously I found it challenging at first, but obviously I got better as time went by.
And in terms of dealing with people, obviously when you're a head of year, you've got a group of form tutors to deal with.
Yeah.
How did you deal with them, making sure that they were doing all the pastoral activities? Because sometimes as a form tutor, I mean, I was a form tutor for year 11 this year. And sometimes you're so busy with your teaching and learning and everything else that's going on in the school with all your responsibilities, the form tutor role kind of falls to one side.
Yeah.
So how did you deal with form tutors who were, having those issues?
If form tutors weren't doing what they should be doing, for example, if they weren't following the schedule for the day, then difficult conversations were needed, and email reminders. First, it was just a generic email reminder. If it still wasn't happening, then it would be difficult conversations, and that did not faze me at all. And at the end of the day, if people are not doing their job, and I've said it before and I'll say it again, they need to be held to account, and we're there to do a job properly, and we should be doing that. And as professionals, we should be doing that. And I know sometimes there are other priorities that take over. Sometimes pastoral needs probably get pushed down to the bottom of the list, because they're sort of low stakes. They're not really showing as if they're measured in any kind of way, but I think they are important, and we need to really be mindful that things are being done right.
And what advice can you give to any young teacher, whether they're an NQT or whether they're early in their career? What advice can you give them who are looking to move into either a head of department role or a head of year role?
I think if you're really wanting to go towards that role, if particularly when this time of the year, when you have a bit more time, a bit more gain time, I would always try and shadow or try and speak to other colleagues within your school. If you can sit in with them on, say, for a lesson or so, then do that. Make use of that time, because having that hands-on experience is really vital. And that'll make you know that you really want to progress, not just probably not within that organization or within another school, but that is something that I would really highly recommend. If you could try and shadow, even speak to members of staff, and ask them what they do that makes them effective, etc. Because I think that getting that advice and support, and that hands-on experience of shadowing someone is vital.
And in terms of your opinion, which route did you find better? Did you enjoy the middle leader, head of department route, which is curriculum based, or did you find the head of year route better, which is pastoral?
I enjoyed both. I think the one that's less demanding for me at the minute is the head of department. However, there are different challenges for both. Now, from I work in a different multi-academy trust. The head of year role is actually they get a lot more time, so they only teach about 12-13 lessons in a week, and the role is given a huge there's a huge emphasis on the role to give them the time to do the role rather than just having one extra free. That was something that I found very challenging initially. So the role, both roles I could do, and I've done effectively, and I can do it well. So my preference at the minute is with the head of department, because that's the route that I see myself going down in the future if I was to progress in a senior leadership role.
And how can young teachers apply for these roles? How can they get their applications to stand out, and what should they do for an interview process?
Okay, I think if you are really interested in becoming a head of department, speak to heads of department in the school. Tell them what what makes them good, and what sort of things you do in your job. I think you know what you really need to be doing if you need to get your application stand out is shadowing someone is vital if you have the time to do that. Because if you're shadowing someone and having the opportunity, then you are, you're getting the hands-on experience, and that in itself is vital. And you're showing that you're being proactive to go out there and have that experience. I think that's you can't. The experience is vital, and that would really help you to stand out. Also, look for opportunities if there's secondary department potentially to do that if the time allows you to do that, and if it's something that you want to do voluntarily. And having a word with the head teacher about that would be really supportive for your applications going forward, I believe.
I had a couple of messages come in. One that says, and it's from Mr. Cotton, he taught in a school that had mixed aged year groups, because some schools do have that vertical tutor groups and things like that. And he said, very good advice, Yasser, about shadowing. Just be careful for not falling for the line. If you do all these jobs, it will help you become a head of department one day.
Absolutely.
You have to be able to read the job specification properly and what the roles are in order to make sure that you're not being overloaded and that you are carrying out the role that you should be as a middle leader.
Without a doubt, definitely.
In terms of reading, are there any books or any places where they can get more information or support from if they wanted more advice about becoming a middle leader or a head of year?
Wow. Okay, now you're picking my brains. There's a lot of leadership books out there. So I mean, I don't really recommend any particular one. One that was recommended to me recently, forgot the name of the author. It's in my diary. My diary's not at hand. Something called A Box of Crayons.
Okay.
And I think I don't know who the author is on that, but that's quite a good one. I think that's on transformational leadership, that is, and that's quite a good one. And there's a couple of good YouTube videos that I was told about as well recently, which I'll have to get back to you. What I'll do is I'll send you the details, and then if viewers are wanting to get and access those videos,
you can tweet it out.
I'll let you know. I'll tweet it as well.
Some of the books that I've come across recently as a middle leader is one by Hayley Hughes, which is about coaching and mentoring, which is a good one. And there are lots of different books out there that you can read and look for. And if you're on Twitter, there's a lot of useful information that you can find out about different routes that you can go on.
Definitely.
Yes, if you could go back to any role, whether it's a middle leader, whether it's a curriculum role, head of department role, or a pastoral head of year role, what would you change? Is there anything that you would change?
I think, yeah, definitely. Hindsight's a wonderful thing. We always want to look back and reflect on where we could do that better, or do something different in a different situation. I think when you first start, you're very, very enthusiastic, and sometimes you're quite naive. I think when I first joined the profession, I was a little bit naive, and I was very eager to do a lot of things. Just be careful that you don't overload yourself and burn yourself out, because obviously we're in a profession that's highly demanding, and the teacher and the teacher retention rate, as is well documented, is very low. So just make sure you do enough and you do it well.
And how long should it take to get up to senior leadership? Now, I know there's not a time limit or a time frame, but roughly, if you were a career teacher where you were wanting to progress, what time frame would you be looking at for senior leadership?
I don't think you could really put a time frame on it. I think you need to show that you've been successful in different roles within your career and shown impact. I'd say, if you've been successful as a head of as a teacher for a number of years, so 3-4 years, and then you're ready for the progression, that's for me is sufficient time. and then you need to show about 3-4 years perhaps as a head of department. Then moving forward, sorry, my kids have just come in.
That's okay.
I was in the and yeah, so yeah, it's just gone. So yeah, and if you are a head of department for maybe another 3-4 years and show that you've made sustainable success over that period of time, then I think then you're probably ready to move on to the next role as a senior leader. But I've seen, from my experience, where some senior leaders in my currently where I currently work, they've been teaching for less than me. So again, sometimes it's not about what it's who you know.
Yeah,
well.
And we're just going to finish off because I know your kids are wanting your time back now. That's absolutely fine. Just to finish off, do you think that there are any challenges that younger teachers might face, or teachers who are looking to go into these roles or even move up into SLT?
Sorry, can you rephrase that question? Sorry,
what challenges might they face?
What the challenge that you face as a as a middle leader?
Yeah, let's take it from middle leader. If you're a middle leader, whether you're a head of department or a head of year, what challenges might you face in order to get up onto the next step?
Sometimes, whether you're or not, you're getting recognised within your school. I think what I found is you need to really put yourself forward for these roles, and if you're not being, if that's showing that you're not really moving ahead, maybe that's not the place for you to be at, and maybe look elsewhere. So the challenges, there are many challenges. So I can't just draw a list upon so many from the top of my head. But again, absolutely, prioritizing is a key part of it as well, and that's really important.
Okay, I had some more comments coming in. Mr. Cotton has said there's excellent advice about not burning out. You need to learn to say one of this little if jobs, basically which one should I prioritize?
Definitely.
Okay, because you shouldn't be able to do everything because you don't have time to do everything within teaching anyway.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir, it's been absolutely fabulous talking to you. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and your wisdom. I'm sure that there are plenty of people out there who can learn from some of the things that you've said today.
Thank you.
What's next for you?
Next for me, right now, go see my son who's crying. No. Just speaking, you know what? I just want to show that I've done well in my department moving forward, and then you know what? Who knows? I don't know. Okay. Maybe moving to a senior role. Who knows?
All right, brilliant. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Yasser. Okay, so it's been a really good show today. A couple of things that I want to share with you just to finish off today. The TT radio team behind the scenes have been doing some fantastic work. I'm absolutely gobsmacked by the amount of work that we get through as a team effort. We have a new newsletter which went out this week, and there's that's thanks to Mal and also Megan. And there's loads of people behind the scenes working on it. So this week you get to meet hosts Mira and Carl, who are absolutely fabulous. If you don't listen into their shows, please make sure you do. We've got a debate on dual coding by Tabitha, who's an excellent host. Scott, wonderful top teacher hacks from him. Jason, who's actually phenomenal at the creative arts, has written a piece on Pride Month, and there's lots more. There's an agony aunt and uncle special, and Noreen and I have been working on that, and it's just a really good team. We've also got the brilliant Graham and Khalil coming up later today. If you do want to listen back to shows, you can go to ttradio.org/listen back. I'm an advocate because I've been listening to lots of shows, and I'm learning so much CPD for free that I probably wouldn't get at school. So I'm very grateful to the TT radio team. I'm learning so much, and it is a wonderful experience. It's been a brilliant week. I hope you've had a great session today, and I will see you all next week. Take care.
You've been listening to Teachers Talk Radio. Tune in live and listen back at ttradio.org. We look forward to hearing from you next time on Teachers Talk Radio.